Hello, everyone. Welcome to what is going to be a comprehensive walkthrough of how Major League Soccer in the United States works. I'm Benakage, and I welcome you along. This is an all-inclusive, or meant to be an all-inclusive guide to the MLS and how it operates. The reason for this guide mainly is after the cancellation of FM25, right, and the delay of a new football manager to 2026, a lot of people are wondering, what should I do in terms of a save? And I think genuinely that a lot of people should try the MLS. I think it's a very unique league that's set up in a very interesting, unique way, but also creates a lot of fun. It's actually a really, really fun league. And it's quite a challenge to actually win because of the thing like the playoff format and whatnot. But a lot of the hurdle that players seem to think, or at least used to disregard MLS as a legitimate save, is the rules and all the different rules that MLS has. And I'm here to explain it to you because really, it's not that complicated. So that's where we're going to begin. Um, we'll start with a few things like roster building and money and transfers. But before we do that, we need to start with mentality. And the big thing is you don't want to come into this save thinking that it's going to operate like any other save that you've done before. Transfers are not really, they don't operate at all practically like they do in other European leagues. If you're like me and you've managed majority in Europe during your MLS save, or during your FM career, I should say, not MLS save, but if you've managed a majority in Europe during your FM career, transfers all kind of work the same way, right? Even if you did it in Asia or whatnot, they kind of, you pay the club a fee, then you agree to a contract with the player. After the club you're paying the fee to agrees to the price to sell the player, and then you negotiate the contract with the player. The player agrees to the terms, he moves to your club. That's not how it really works here. If you're buying a player from outside the MLS, yes, that is still very much the way it works, but there is a salary cap with which you have to adhere to. It is a hard limit for all clubs imposed by the league. A lot of what you find where the rules have come have been through, or why the rules are in place, have been through just the experience of how the league has grown over the last 30 years, plus the need to keep the clubs financially solvent so that they can continue to operate year over year over year over year. On that note, I do want to talk about budgets, and we're going to talk about money first, and we're going to talk about registration, because you are going to be required to register your players at any point, or at certain points during the season. For example, the week before your first game, you will have to have a registered list of your players. So we're going to go to squad and under overview registration, and this is absolutely going to be your home. You need to visit this page often. The reason being is because there are roster size limits on top of salary limits that you need to adhere to. And to understand all of that, this page will have it all inclusive for you. So, to start, the squad size can be no more than 30 players, right? Of those 30 players, 20 players can be either designated players, of which there is a maximum of 3, or senior players. The reason I say this is because when you negotiate with a player to sign him for your team, you have to assign him a contract type. This can be a reserve contract if you want him eligible to play for your second team or your reserve team in this league called MLS Next Pro. Um, there's a under 22 initiative, meaning if a player is under 22, then you can sign him to an under 22 initiative contract, previously known as Generation Adidas. This is to help. The reason those contracts are in place is to help clubs, or at least incentivize clubs to buy young players to develop young talent. The way they do this is the league offers you an under 22 initiative contract that you can offer players under 22, and if they accept, then only a portion of their contract will go towards your salary cap instead of the full amount, right? So there are senior contracts, there are designated players, there are reserves, there are senior minimum salaries, and there are under 22 initiative contracts. There are 5 contract types. We are going to go through them all right now. The first is the under 22 initiative contract. So, under 22 initiatives, I believe Jack McGlynn, who oddly enough just went to Houston, was on an under 22. No, he's on a senior contract. Um, there are under 22 initiatives. Was it Donovan? That might have been one. Could have been Matt Real, but I think he's older than 20. Yeah, he's 23 now. It's probably Holden Trent. He's on a reserve. My word. Um, who else is under 22 on this squad? McGlynn, Flock is 24, I want to say. 20 Flock is 21 in the save. This is from he's on a senior contract as well. Interesting. So, uh, we might be able to set this to contract and see what type of contract he's in, or they're on. But of course, it doesn't let me do that. So let's do copy of select. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. It's contract, and then customize current view, and then there is no contract type in here. Okay, cool. Oh, TCS contract details, maybe. Although that's with the skin. That didn't do it either. Okay, so there are under 22 contracts you can offer players. I don't think I even have one right now. Foreign, international. Jesus Bueno's over it. Where's Marcus Anderson? Here we go. Marcus Anderson. He's on a senior minimum salary contract. Okay. In fact, I don't know if I have U22s. I have homegrowns. Homegrown combined cap reduction. So homegrowns are, you know what homegrowns are. They're players born and raised in, from your club. Quinn is on a way more than that. Yeah, because he's actually a really good player. Chris Donovan might be the other under 22. No, he's senior minimum now because he's 22. Okay. Raffanello, Padiano. He's on a reserve. So I don't think I have a under 22 here to show you guys, but um, you can sign that under 22s to an under 22 contract. It is possible. Um, Under 22 initiatives, they are just that. They're literally contracts you offer to under 22 players um, that do not have their full uh, contract wage hit your salary cap. The salary cap is a hard cap, by the way. So just to talk to about the salary cap real quick before we go into it, because you might say, what's a salary cap? Um, Everything that you see here is going to be per annual or per annum because MLS, the figures that I know of with MLS are always per year. So we've changed it to American dollars per year to kind of make everything even. But for the salary for the squad, the league says I can spend no more than $5.21 million a year on salaries. Now, you can finagle that number of what you're actually paying with things like designated player contracts and buying out contracts or buying down contracts. We will get into that. But just for now, know that you have under 22s that you can offer, under 22 contracts that you can offer players, okay, that are under 22. Um, and you can um, also use, you also can, I need to understand that homegrown players do not also account towards a salary cap. So homegrown players, which are trained at an MLS academy team, uh, will not count towards your salary cap. They're considered off budget. Off budget players are players whose contract type, whether they are senior minimum salary, whether they are homegrown, they do not go toward, or they're reserve, they don't go towards your salary cap. So to build this roster, right, you have 30 players, and we said that no more than 3 can be designated players, no more than 20 can be senior players. Um, and where does the other 10 come from? Well, the other 10 comes from reserves, senior minimum salaries, under 22 initiatives, homegrowns. And all of the restrictions are here. So, for example, you may have a maximum of 4 non-homegrown, non-reserve, off-budget players. Well, who are those players? Those are senior minimum salary players. That's what those are. So I can have a maximum of 4. So you can see here under where this says SMS, under Isaiah LaFleur, if I turn him off on registration, maximum of non-reserve, non-homegrown budget players goes down to 3. Now he's making $85,000, $85,500 a year. That would put me over the salary cap. But because he's a senior minimum salary contract, if I click him on, he has no salary cap impact. So what you want to understand is when you register players, homegrowns have a portion of their contract. I shouldn't say that they don't count towards the salary cap. They have a portion of their contract not count towards the salary cap. That's what you see here under this little I to the right, where it says combined homegrown salary cap impact deducted 102,450 per year. That's the discount of signing a homegrown player coming off the salary cap. So it's important to know that homegrowns will not 100% count towards your salary cap. Senior minimum salary contracts are contracts that you can offer. The reason they're called senior minimum salary is because you can literally offer the minimum salary that MLS mandates you may offer a player. And you can have their salary cap or their reduction towards the salary cap not count. So, for example, for Oliver Semmel, or Olivier Semmel here, right? He is on a senior minimum salary cap or contract for $119,000 a year. If I click him off, again, maximum number of non-reserve, non-homegrown, off-budget players goes down by 1, and I click him back on, he has no impact to the salary cap because he is on a senior minimum salary contract. So senior minimum salaries, up to 4 of them, do not hit your salary cap. The other ones are reserve contracts. You can have a maximum of 6 reserve contracts. Holden Trent here is a reserve player. He's making nothing. So let me see if I can find a reserve player that's actually making something. Well, I don't think they all do because it's a reserve contract technically, right? So they do not have their wages go towards the salary cap. You see, they're all on 0. So, all of these guys that have RES next to their name that are reserve players, they're all on nothing. Nick Pariano, I click him off, I click him on, he's worth nothing. He's an off-budget player because he's on a reserve contract. So, you can have a maximum of 6 of them. You can also sign non-homegrown players to reserve contracts, but only a maximum of 4 of them may be registered. So that's important to note as well. Reserve contracts genuinely do not hit the salary cap unless you start signing more than 6 reserve players, really. Um, then their contracts might start to affect your salary cap. Everything that you do is going to be with the salary cap in mind. So there are off-budget contract types, which are senior minimum salaries and reserve contracts, as well as under 22 initiative contracts. You can have no more than 10 of those type of contracts. You can have no more than 4 non-reserve contracts to non-homegrown players be off budget. Mainly meaning you can have no more than 4 senior minimum salaried players who are not homegrown uh, go or not count towards your salary cap. You can have only up to 6 reserve players, and you can have only more than no more than 4 reserve players who are not homegrown players as well, trained at an MLS academy team. If that's confusing, I apologize. Hit me up in the comments, and I'll try to explain it more in text. But those are the type of contracts that you have that are off budget. A majority of the contracts you're going to offer are going to be on budget. They're going to be senior contracts, which are what all these guys are on here. Olivier Mbaizo, senior contract. Damian Lowe, senior contract, right? All of these other players, senior contracts. Leon Flock, senior contract, okay? Alejandro Bedoya, senior contract, right? Well, he's a player coach, so senior contract on that one for him to be a player. The exception is designated players. Now, you get 3 designated players. What's a designated player? A designated player is basically you telling MLS, that's all it is. It's a contract type, okay, that basically establishes that you are going to pay the player more than $639,000, somewhere around there, 630, 619, but the salary cap is the designated players MLS. Let's actually look it up and see what what it is. Right, those are the 2010 changes. So looks like 480,625 was the number. So senior roster, supplemental roster, designated players. It was around 630 last I checked. They did just update the rules and competition like 3 days ago. They updated it, and I haven't been able to find the actual cap limit of the designated player. I'm looking through now on the MLS website because again they have just offered or changed the designated player rule, but I believe it was $639,000. So okay, yeah, designated player salary budget charge is $743,750. Now that's for 2025. In this game, it's going to be a little bit less. It's going to be the old rule, like 630,000, but around 639,000. So what a designated player contract says is it is a contract type that you offer to a player that basically establishes that the club is going to pay the player whatever amount of money that they want. Could be $1.5 million, $2 million a year, $3 million a year, whatever. But their actual salary cap hit is going to be limited to $639,000 a year. That's what a designated player rule does. That's how Carlos Vela came in the league. That's how Hugo Lloris is in the league. That's how Marco Reus is in the league. That's how Ricky Puig is in the league. Right? They're designated players. So what it does, you can see here, Daniel Gazdag, the salary cap hit is 651. So that's your limit, 651. He's making a lot more than that. He's making $1.35 million a year. But his salary cap hit is limited to $651,000 a year. Why? Because he's on a designated player contract. That's why. And that's all the designated player does. You may have up to 3 of them, and that's all they do. Um, so, just to review contract types, you have off-budget contracts that don't count to your salary cap. They include up to, but no more than 6 reserve players. Senior minimum salary players up to, but no more than 4. And under 22 initiative contracts as well, right? Um, and that's what off-budget contracts are. And then you have all of the on-budget contracts that account towards your salary cap, which are senior contracts and designated players, and all of their salary cap hit, all of their wages hit your salary cap. The exception is designated players who are limited to $651,000 of salary cap hit, no matter what you pay them, right? Again, example, Jose Martinez, he's being paid $773,000 a year. The salary cap limit for him is $651,000 a year. Now, you might say, hang on a minute, because Gazdag's a designated player, and he's limited to $651,000. But Jose Martinez isn't a designated player. He's making more than $651,000. Yet his salary cap is limited to that. How is that possible? Well, this is where 2 allocation buckets are going to come into. GAM, or general allocation money, and TAM, targeted allocation money. We're going to talk about that now real quick. What is GAM and what is TAM? So GAM is general allocation money. It is money that you have to trade with other clubs. When you try to buy a player from another club in MLS, there is no transfer fee. It is a trade. If you know anything about U.S. sports, you know that players aren't bought and sold. They're traded, right? Luka Doncic just went to the Lakers on a trade. It was a really bad trade for the Mavs, but the Mavs still traded him, right? And that's what happens, right? Wayne Gretzky famously went from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings on a trade. They didn't buy him. Same thing happens here in MLS. If you want to buy a player from MLS, from another MLS club, you are going to be trading for them. What are you going to be trading? General allocation money. So I can go in. Let's see if I can do that now. I'm going to go to Atlanta United real quick. Okay. We're going to look up their squad. And I'm going to pick any player. Okay, any player at all. Let's say Quentin Westberg. Okay. Let's say this is the guy I want. He's 36. I wouldn't want, but let's just, for argument's sake, say, hey, I want him. When you come down here to make an offer, you're going to get kicked over to this screen. You're going to be like, wait, what do I do? Where's the money? Well, you're trading for him. So what you're offering, or what you want from Atlanta is Quentin Westberg, right? I can go here to add and select general allocation money and just straight up buy the player with allocation money if I want, right? In addition, you may trade another player, so I can do a player swap. I can choose the rights to a player. For example, Anthony Fontana was signed by the Union, loaned to a Serie B side in Italy, and because you have, or actually I should say, sold to that player, to Serie B, but because he was homegrown with the Union owned the player rights, so that if he wants to come back to MLS, and let's say Real Salt Lake make an offer for him, by the union owning the player rights, the union can make an equal offer to whatever Real Salt Lake make. So I don't have to compete with Real Salt Lake. I have the player rights to Anthony Fontana. I could literally go to Fontana if he wants to come back to MLS, and whomever offers him a contract, I can offer the equivalent contract no matter what. So let's say Fontana, who was sold to Serie B, he was homegrown here in Philadelphia. He, let's say Real Salt Lake are interested. They offer him $100,000, right? He accepts the offer. I now have the right to either offer $100,000 to Fontana as well, not a penny more. And if he chooses Real Salt Lake over Philadelphia, Real Salt Lake will have to pay Philadelphia a fee to acquire the player rights or for having signed Fontana. That's all player rights are. Okay? You hold on to these player rights for a few years and then they kind of expire. You can also waive them at any time, but generally you hold on to player rights and then they will expire after a certain number of years, and a player can be completely unrestricted free agent. Right. This is not a highly edited video. I'm not one of these editors on FM, by the way. But you're going to learn MLS through this stream, this video. I'm 100% sure about that. The other thing you can trade or use to sign players is the draft allocation. Now, a lot of people think the draft is important. In real life, and slowly in this game, it's starting to become apparent. That's not really the case. Why is that? So the U.S. system right now is pay to play. You have to pay to be a part of an MLS academy, right? MLS academies start at U12. That's genuinely the first level of an MLS academy is under 12s. If you're in the academy system, usually, I mean, that's usually good enough to develop a good player who could play for the senior team. If the player has talent, then they're in the academy system at the U12s, and they run all the way through the academy system through the U19s. There's a chance they could play for the senior team, right? They're going to develop into a solid player. Players who, but let's say because it's pay to play, unfortunately, in the U.S., let's say you're a parent and you can't afford to send your kid to an MLS academy. You can't afford to put him through that system. What do? They go off to college, right? And they play football in college, and they play through the NCAA college system. When they graduate college and they're 21 and 22, they can declare eligible for the draft and go into the MLS Super Draft. So talent that maybe has developed outside of MLS because they never had the money to be in an MLS academy, they logistically weren't close to an MLS academy. Maybe they were in like Nebraska, and they traditionally aren't near any MLS school or an MLS academy, logistically because of how big the United States is. They can go into college. They can develop their talents by playing competitively in college, and then they can come out and declare themselves for the draft. And then MLS sides have an opportunity to draft a player into their club. There are 3 rounds of the draft, and the draft happens right at the beginning of the new year, every year. So, really, I think it's like end of December, but it might be last week of December, first week of January, something like that. But in the game at least, right? So there are 3 rounds of the draft. You can trade your picks in those drafts for a player. So I might not even have to offer general allocation money. I can offer Atlanta United first pick in the 2026 draft and say that might be good enough for you, actually. So that's possible as well. Your pick order depends on your finishing order in MLS. So the worst team that in the league will always get the first pick in the draft. Genuinely, there's not a lot of great talent that comes through the draft. Why? Because by the time they come through the draft, they're 21 and 22, And MLS has a lot of great coaching resources right now in the league. So the academies tend to be where players develop the best. And um, college players genuinely they're playing against not as strong talent as the MLS academies, and are also not receiving as good coaching as they will receive in the MLS academy. So the draft doesn't tend to produce a lot of great talent, but that's what it is. The other thing you can trade for is international slots, up to 5 years or permanently. What is an international spot? So let's go back to registration real quick. You're limited to 8 international players. Okay. Every club starts with 8 international spots. These international spots can be used to sign an international player, a non-American or Canadian player. um, you have to have the international spot to sign a foreign player. You can't just bring in a bunch of foreign players. They have to have international spots. But those international spots are tradable. You can trade them. So I can give Atlanta an international spot for Quentin Westberg, and Atlanta can go for 1 year, and Atlanta can turn around at the beginning of the year, since it's January 2nd, and sign an international player for the whole upcoming 2023 season. That's possible, right? I can also ask for their international spots. I can say, I want Quentin Westberg and an international spot for 5 years. And that will allow me, and I'll give you money and a player. I'll give you Joaquin Torres, and I'll give you $60,000. So the potential to experiment with the draft or with the trades is really limitless. You can do all sorts of things with trading. But again, you can't go and just sign a player. You have to trade something for them. I have to go here and give Atlanta something. General allocation money, player, another player on my roster, player rights to a future player, draft allocation spots or a draft pick, an international spot. I have to give them something, right? So that is what general allocation money is partly used for, and that's also how trades work. We try to kind of bundle that into how trades work. Um, that's only for currently within the MLS, okay? That's how you buy players within the MLS. So that's what general allocation money is used for. When you sell a player, general allocation money will enter, you will get some of that player sale converted into general allocation money. Now, the important thing to note is that general allocation money expires. So here at the beginning of the season, 3.8 was available to use. Every year the team will receive a fixed amount of GAM. That comes in from the league. Unspent GAM from this year, from 2023. Remember, the game is 2023. So unspent general allocation money from 2023 is halved in 3 years' time. So if I'm getting 1.9 million from the league in general allocation money, in 3 years' time, that amount will be cut to $950,000 if I do not use it. In an additional 2 years after that, it will completely expire. Going forward in FM 2026, this will no longer be an issue. The start of the 2025 season in real life, MLS said GAM is no longer going to expire. You can stack as much of it as you want for as long as you want. You can sit on a mountain of it if you wanted to, but it won't expire. But because this is the start of the 2023 season, GAM halves after 3 years, expires after 5 if you do not spend it. 9 times out of 10 you're going to spend it. I mean, that's 3 years is a lot. I mean, this 1.9 million I can blow all in this year and wait for the next allocation of 1.9 million for next year. Like that's basically how GAM works. But the other thing you could use GAM for, getting back to our original point, if we go to registration and we talk about Jose Martinez not being a designated player but making more than the salary cap, how do you do that? You can buy down contracts with it. So what I mean by that is Damian Lowe here is making $318,000 a year, and he counts towards my salary cap $318,000. If I want to create space for myself to sign another player, since I have 4 roster spots, I can come here, right click on his name, contract, buy down salary cap impact. And it's under the contract details. Here's my general allocation money, right? Here's my salary cap that I'm spending. Here's the max salary cap. Here's my remaining space. I can come over and buy down his contract. And I can spend, remember I started with 1.9 million. I'm spending what, 1.68 million? I'm sorry, 168,000. To buy his salary cap impact down to $150,000. So I'm going to get that $168,000 back into my salary cap. So if I click that, by confirming, Damian Lowe's salary cap impact will be reduced to $150,000 for the 2023 season, and $170,000 will be deducted from the general allocation money. Next season, his salary cap impact will return to $318,000. I can click yes, and there you go. I've bought his contract down. So that's how you can do it. Now you see I have 5.01 million in salary cap. I've now given myself a little bit of space, about $200,000 in salary that I can go. I can do the same thing here. Andre Blake, his cap impact is down to 169,000. So if I want to look at cap impact, I can sort by that and say, who else can I buy down, right? Leon Flock, his full contract is hitting my salary cap impact. He's also wanted by another club. Sanders Nagbo is currently not counting towards the salary cap because he's not registered, right? You see, I have the X. If I were to register him, oh no, I'm over the cap. What can I do? I can come here and I can buy down his salary cap impact, and I can buy it down as much as I don't have to go the full way. I can whatever I want. And I say, oh, he's only 130,000. Look at that. Let me buy his contract down or his salary cap impact down. Let me go back to registration, and now when I click him on, oh, look at that. I'm under the salary cap now. So that's what you can do with general allocation money. You can buy down player contracts or salary caps with it, right? Salary cap impacts. Now he's making $260,000 per year, but he's only counting $130,000 towards my salary cap. So general allocation money is useful for that. You could also buy the international slots. Remember we talked about international slots real quick. The one thing I did forget to say, if I wanted to propose, let's say I propose a trade with Atlanta United, right? Can I actually just go to? I just want to make a trade for uh, transfers. Offer to MLS clubs. Maybe not. Draft allocations. This is where you can offer it to clubs as well. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go back to Atlanta very quickly. I'm going to pick a player that's not got a lot of wages. Let's say Efren Morales here. Okay. I don't even want him. I want an international slot. And I can just straight up buy it. The international slots are around 150,000 to 250,000 a year. So I can say, hey, Atlanta, can I get an international slot for a year? And they'll be like, oh, they've accepted. Cool. So now I'm going to trade literally just $150,000 of my GAM, and I'm going to get an international spot. So that's totally possible. You could just straight buy a slot from another team, which is very useful if you're trying to sign players. I try to always have one free, or I would. There's no limit by the way, there's no limit on the number of international spots you can have. The Goodja, who's decided to pick up MLS, he has close to 20. He has close to 20 international spots. So you can buy international spots from teams at any time with GAM. When you sell a player, part of that GAM, part of that sale will get converted to GAM. So that's how you refresh your GAM. Plus, you get GAM from the league. The league gives you 1.9 million in GAM every year to use. So, keep an eye on your GAM, and current GAM is 160. So, and then okay, so that available at the season start will be 3.5 million. But that's how you use GAM. It's very useful to finagle contract space for your cap, and use it to buy international spots so you can assign players or buy international players. But let's talk about TAM, and we're going to talk about TAM and international players. Because what is targeted allocation money and how is it used? So, targeted allocation money is a fixed amount that MLS gives clubs at the start of the season to help acquire foreign talent, essentially, or just talent currently outside the MLS. They don't have to be foreign. They can be American, but playing overseas. Targeted allocation money is used to help acquire players who are not currently playing within the MLS. What that does, if I go to scouting, if I can find it, there it is. I go to scouting, players in range. So I go here to say Lucas Poss, and I right click, and I approach the sign. I already talked with his agent ahead of recording this, and I approach the sign, finalize these things, right? When you're here, you get to pick the contract type, senior minimum salary, senior, sometimes designated players, whatever. He wants $416,000 per year for 2 years. I might not want to take that salary cap hit, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to go down here to additional budgets, and now he's American, so I can only use GAM. But if I was trying to sign a foreign player or designated player, I can select TAM, and I can use TAM. So here I can say, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000. I'm going to use this chunk of my GAM, but he's only going to cost $380,000 towards the wage budget, right? So, why is it not one for one? Because you have to factor in things like the agent fee, the signing on fee, the transfer fee. So, if I choose more, 250,000, his salary cap budget hit is only going to be his wage budget cost will be $230,000, but his salary cap is only going to be it's $230,000. So that is how you can, when you're negotiating contracts, you can use it to buy down players. So for example, I'm gonna see if I can do it with this guy. Let's say regular starter. He's happy with that, right? I can't do any because it's under reserve. So if I do senior and I can only use GAM for him as well, mainly because he's not a designated player. Whew, he wants a lot of money, but I can offer him whatever. Don't be afraid because the wages start red. It tends to always happen in MLS. So we'll walk away from him. I want to see if I can sign somebody internationally. Let me try. Let me try expiring 1 year and see if I can show you guys what I wanted to show you with TAM. Um, I can't really go for somebody Canadian. He's playing in the U.S. He's Canadian. Let's try this. Oh, he's playing in the U.S. Ah, there's definitely guys playing abroad. There's the United Premier Soccer League as well. That's in the U.S. The U.S. has the United Premier Soccer League. They have the USSL Championship as well. Um, let's see. Anybody? Maybe him. He's 850,000 though. Uh, I'd have to make an offer. So is anybody actually out of contract? Let me put it that way. Unattached. Let's try unattached. I had it, that Chilean I had it perfect with because I could use Tam with him because he's Chilean, and then I walked away before I recorded, so I've not been able to actually show you guys Tam. Oh yeah, again, because he's on a reserve. It needs to be a senior. So, and then let's just adjust that, and I can come down and click it's only GAM because again, there's no transfer fee involved because he's an expired player, so it's only GAM. These are funds that will make an immediate impact on the field. Yeah. So at the start of 2023, every MLS team was given 2.7 million in TAM. A senior player who has a salary over the salary cap budget of 651,000 per year, then you could choose TAM to buy that contract down. You would do it during the contract negotiations by selecting this here when it's highlighted. A homegrown player who is paid at least 150,000 per year, you could also use TAM for. So that's TAM. I'm not able to show you exactly what I mean, but if I go to, let me see if I can go to expiring 3 months. Apparently not 6 months. Oh, Lucas was the most. Let me sort by wage, and let me try him. Oh, I'd have to agree to a transfer offer first. Let's see. Oh, maybe unattached. Somebody unattached. Those transfer values nothing because they're all unattached. So let's see. Let's see if I was going to pay 800,000. So then I can go here. Yeah, because I was going to pay him 871,000. Now I can go here and say I'll use 725,000 of TAM, and now that goes over to able to buy him. So if you're going to pay him over the maximum salary cap hit of any player, 651,000, no player is allowed to make over 651,000 towards the salary cap. They're allowed to make over it, I should say, but they're not allowed to impact the salary cap more than 651,000. So when they do, you can use either funds you want, but you can then use targeted allocation money, however much you want. I could, if he's making 871 and I got to get him below 651, I have to use at least 220,000. That's the minimum amount that I have to use to get him into to the MLS. But I could do more to lessen the impact. Right? I can choose to do more right here in the contract negotiations to lessen the impact. So that's what TAM is used for. TAM is when you have a player over 651,000 per week and you're signing them during the contract negotiations, you can agree to give the league TAM to buy the salary cap impact down. And that's all it is. You have a wage budget and a transfer budget. Why is the wage budget 15.7 million, but the salary cap is 5 million? Specifically because you can pay players over the salary cap. You can pay them over the cap impact of 651,000. You just have to use GAM and TAM to buy those salary cap impacts down. Right? So he's making 651. I can buy it down. and then it frees me up more space. But again, you can pay over the $651,000 limit on the cap. It just has to be a designated player, or you've had to bought the contract down. That's it. That's one of the two options you have. Um, so those are contract types in MLS. Um, let's go over basically that's how GAM and TAM work in MLS. That's how trades work in MLS. When you're buying some player from overseas, yes, you still have to offer the club money. That's where the transfer budget comes in. You know, basically 2.7 million right now. So if I'm buying a player from the Chilean division, first division, I have to pay that club a transfer fee. That still works like normal. My transfer budget is 2.7 million. So now I could go to them and say, hey, I'll give you 1.5 million for this player, and they'll say that fee's fine, and then I can negotiate the contract and finagle it based on the salary cap space. That's literally it, guys. That's literally it. You just have to understand the registration restrictions, the number of international spots you have, no more than 3 designated players, no more than 6 reserve players, no more than 4 reserve players who are not homegrown, no more than 4 under 22 initiative or senior minimum salary contracts who are not homegrown, that don't count towards the budget, and no more than $5.21 million a year. That's it. And whatever you may do to contracts, you can buy them down. All these are bought down. Like, I can't buy down Andre Blake because his contract is basically at a minimum. I can buy him down a smidge, but I can't buy down Carranza's cap space anymore because I've bought it down to the minimum it can be for a young designated player. I can't buy down Glez's contract too much more because he's already only making his cap hit is already 13,000 above the minimum. So if I sort by cap impact, I can't buy down Matt Real's contract because he's already at 150,000. So, and that's all it is finagling your cap space. So this is basically a comprehensive guide to the MLS. The only other thing we're going to want to go over is the competitions. What is the Supporter Shield? What is MLS? What is Leagues Cup? So Leagues Cup. So in MLS, right, you have an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference. You are going to play every team in the Eastern Conference twice. That is going to be, or for me, because I'm Philly, if you were in the West, you would play every team in the Western Conference. So you're going to play either 28 games against conference opponents or 26 games, depending on what conference you're in, because the West has 14, the East has 15. That is changing. San Diego FC is starting in MLS in 2025. So when FM26 comes out, San Diego FC will be in the West, and you will have 15 and 15. So, I'm going to talk in terms of Philadelphia because that's the club I've selected, obvious reasons. But we would play 28 games against the Eastern Conference, and then we would play 6 games against random Western Conference opponents. The season is always 34 games. Always 34 games. If you finish within the top 9, you make the playoffs. If you finish in the top 7, you go straight to the first round. 8th will host 9th in a 1-game wild card round. Once whoever wins that game will then go on to play the first seed. The Eastern Conference, so here we go, Eastern Conference wildcard. It's 1 game. The winner advances to the first round, right? Whether Eastern Conference or Western Conference. The first round, which has the 8 teams left in each conference, is a best of 3. It is not a 2-legged series. It's a best of 3. You can thank Apple for that. because that's what they want. That's what they basically forced MLS hands to create when they signed the TV deal. Um, but it is a best of three. Um, so first leg match rules: only registered players, penalty shootout after 90 minutes. There's no extra time. Um, Match goes to a replay if scores are leveled after 90 minutes. Penalty shootout if scores are still level. So basically, what it means is if you split the series. So let's say I'm playing Atlanta, right? In the first round. I win the first leg. Second leg, it finishes 1-1. We go to a penalty shootout. Atlanta wins the penalty shootout. Then we have to play a third leg or a third match in the best of three. Again, penalty shootout after 90 minutes. There's no extra time. Um, Once you win two of those games by penalty shootout or otherwise, then you're in the semifinal. Extra time is played in the semifinal, and there's no two legs. It's one and done from here on out. One and done in the conference final. One and done in the MLS Cup final. That's it, right? So MLS Cup is the title you're actually trying to win. That is the league title. So none of this. Oh, I topped the group. I'm the best. I have the most points of any club. What do I win? You win the Supporters Shield. The Supporters Shield is the overall best record in the regular season. What's neat that MLS does do, you know, is that at the end of the regular season, the Supporters Shield is an actual shield. It's a flat shield, pure silverware, or pure silver, I should say. And the reason it's called the Supporters Shield is because the club that wins it doesn't hold on to the trophy. The club that wins it, um, obviously they lift it on the field and then they turn around and they give it to their supporters groups. And the supporters groups, the official supporters groups of the clubs, will share the shield and they'll hold on to the shield and they'll be responsible for maintaining and keeping the shield. So we won it in 2020, right? And we won it in 2020. So for the entire 2021 season, the Sons of Men, the official supporters group for the Union, held the shield at every pregame tailgate we had. The shield was there. You could lift it and take photos of it and kiss it and whatever you wanted to. You could do whatever you wanted to with it. It was great, within reason, obviously. Um, and then we took it into the stadium for every match, obviously, when we had it at the stadium. And then New England won it in 2021, and we had to mail it to the New England supporters group. And the New England supporters group receives it, gives it to the club. The club lifts it, gives it back to the supporters group. And that's what they do. So, um, it's a nice thing to win, but it is no way, shape, or form the league title. The league title is the MLS Cup. That's what you're here to win. The U.S. Open Cup is the equivalent of the FA Cup or the DFB Pokal, whatever league you like, or the Copa del Rey, whatever league you like to compete in. Canadian Championship. There is a Canadian Championship for the Canadian teams. So I'm Philadelphia, based in the U.S. Obviously, if I go to Vancouver Whitecaps, and I go to competitions, they have the Canadian Championship, which is their equivalent, right? So a lot less teams in it, though, obviously. But if you're picking a U.S. team, you'll have the U.S. Open Cup, and so that is basically the equivalent of the FA Cup here. A lot of teams. So you can see the FA Cup is 6 rounds, and then the semifinal final. U.S. Open Cup is the same way. You also have something called the Leagues Cup, which is another competition. The Leagues Cup is, I don't personally like the Leagues Cup, but it's got an importance because it creates Champions League qualification spots. The Leagues Cup is a glorified MLS versus Liga MX competition. Now, in real life, they've just changed the format to be 32 teams. Prior to that, and in this save, it's going to include all Liga MX and um, MLS sides. Liga MX, I believe, has 18 teams, I want to say. Or is it 16? 18 teams. So Liga MX has 18 teams. MLS is 29. So it is essentially, what, 37? No, that's 47. 47 teams. They're usually groups of 3 or 4. And you play everybody in your group once. And the top 2 in each group will advance to the round of 32, where everything is single leg. All the games are played in the United States. That's not built into this game. You will play games in Mexico. But the top 3, there is a third place playoff as well. The top 3 will advance to the Champions League. So if I go here, everything is regionalized because the U.S. is so massive in terms of the land space that it's broken down into regions. So you have the West quarterfinal, the groups, which is like West 1, West 2, West 3, things like that. And then you'll have the West quarterfinal, the West semifinal, the West final. And then you have the playoff semifinals. The losers qualify for the third place playoff. The winner qualifies for the North American Champions Cup. So, qualification to the Champions League. You finish top 3 in the Leagues Cup. Oh my God, come on. Why is it not giving me the name of the competition? Okay. Right. The winner of the U.S. Open Cup will also go to the North American Champions League. The exception are amateur teams. They're not eligible. Don't know why. Don't ask me why. Um, the two teams, one team qualifies for the North American Champions Cup, or basically the Champions League, second round. So they get a bye in the first round. 5 teams qualify depending on the winner and the runner-up of the U.S. Open Cup. So the winner of the MLS Cup is the number 1. That is the first team that wins, right? If you win MLS Cup, you go to the Champions League. If you win the Supporters Shield, you go to the Champions League. If you finish top of the conference in the regular season, you go to the Champions League. If you win the U.S. Open Cup, you go to the Champions League. If you do a double, if you finish top of the East and you've won the U.S. Open Cup, then it goes to the next best team in the Supporters Shield standing. So the Supporters Shield is not for nothing, right? It is important, but that's how you qualify for the Champions League. So it's always the winner of the Cup, the top team of the Supporters Shield, the 2 top teams of the Eastern and Western Conference, and the winner of the U.S. Open Cup. If any of those are a repeat, then it goes to the next team in the MLS Supporters Shield table. What is waivers? That's another thing to do. What are waivers? So there's a few other things to go over real quick. One is waivers, and the other is the reentry draft. So the reentry draft are players who are 23 years old, who have played in MLS for at least 3 seasons, who have an expiring contract, and have not had a contract extension option exercised. They can go into a re-entry draft. Players who are at least 25 years old, have played in MLS at least 4 seasons, and have not been offered a salary at least as much as their current contract by their current club, can choose to enter the re-entry draft. What does the re-entry draft do? So if I have a player, let's go to squad. I'm going to go to registration again. So let's say I have a player. So Glesnes would be a good idea of this. So Glesnes has been in MLS for a few seasons. This is his 5th season IRL coming up. So you can see here he's been with the club for 3 seasons. This will be his 4th. So after this season, after 2025 when his contract expires, if I do not offer him a contract that at the same level he's currently making, he can choose to enter the re-entry draft. Any MLS club can then elect to draft him, and if they do, the player rights that I have as the union will transfer to that club. If they, assuming that they offer a contract and he accepts. So that's the re-entry draft. um, uh, that's stage one, 3 rounds. The second stage is any players not selected in stage one can go into stage two of the entry draft, and drafted players will have their MLS player rights transferred to the club drafting. Oh, so they don't actually have to offer a contract. As long as you draft them, you get the player rights for them. The waiver draft is players who have either been waived by a club or are an expiring contract but don't meet the minimum years of service. 3 if they're at least 23 years old, 4 if they're at least 25 years old. Um, and they don't meet the requirements for unrestricted free agency. They can go into the waiver draft. Under contract players selected in the waiver draft will be automatically added to the drafting club's roster on their existing contract. So if I have a player making $100,000, and he's not played 3, he's 22, let's say he's 24, but he's only played in MLS 2 seasons, right? So he's not ready for unrestricted free agency. His contract's expiring at the end of the year. He can go into the waiver draft rule, and if I draft him, I assume the $100,000 salary cap hit for his contract, but I don't have to pay the club that's waived him anything. So clubs that draft out of contract players must issue a genuine offer to the selected player. Drafted players will have their MLS rights transferred to the club. So that's what the waiver draft is. The last thing that we're going to go over, we're going to go back to squad registration, and we're going to talk about waiving players and injuries. So, if I do not select the player and I confirm selection, okay, the players not selected, the ones here on purple are loaned out, so I can't register them because they're loaned out. But if I do not select Sanders Nagbo and Joaquin Torres, and I confirm that is my registration, the players will go on a waiver list. Waivers are when you don't register a player, they go on the waiver list. They sit on the waiver list for 7 to 10 days. There is a list. I don't know where to find it, if I'm honest, but there is a list that includes. It's a waiver order, and what it is yeah, I can't find it. But if you don't register a player, they go on a waiver list for 7 to 10 days. At that point in time, any MLS club can claim that player and move them to their club. It's called claiming a player off waivers. If you're familiar with the MLB at all, they use the same thing when you send down players to the lower leagues, right? So if I do not register Joaquin Torres, let's say, okay, he will go on waivers, and then let's say Montreal wants him and they claim him off waivers. He becomes, and they make him an offer. Well, I don't even think they have to make him an offer. I think they just claim him off waivers, and they assume his contract. He then becomes a Montreal Impact player, just like that. There is a waiver list order, meaning to determine if 2 clubs make the same claim. So if I drop Joaquin Torres, and Montreal wants him, and Colorado wants him, then it goes to whoever's higher in the waiver order. So let's say Montreal is 5 and Colorado is 3. Colorado will get the player, Montreal will not, and Colorado will move to the bottom of the waiver list. Montreal will move up one spot to 4. And that's how it works. The moment you claim a player off the waiver list, you move to the bottom of the waiver order. And you continue to move up as other clubs claim players off waivers. So the crazy thing about MLS is you used to be able to trade your waiver position, but that is no longer possible. But that's what waivers are. So you have to know that any player you do not register will go on waivers. If they clear waivers, you can keep them on the squad, but just leave them unregistered. Um, so that's the waiver list. It's very important to know that because you don't want to unregister a player that then gets claimed and you can no longer play them at all. You've lost everything then. Two more things to go over really quickly. One is I just had it in my head. Not waivers. Not registered players. One is guaranteed contracts. I know that. Um, injuries. Right. So, injuries are important to note because there is an injury list and a season-ending injury list. So, I can't show you it because we don't have. It's the beginning of the season, but you will have if a player is hurt and you think he is going to miss more than 6 games, you can place him on the injured list. What the injured list does is because you're limited on the roster size, you can swap players in and out that get injured. So, for example, if Julian Carranza, or let's say Kai Wagner here, gets hurt and he's out for, let's say, 2 months, I can place him on the injured list. What that allows me to do is basically unregister him, right? And use his salary cap space to register another player in his place. And then when he comes back, I can do the same. Just remember, if I unregister the player that I put in his place, he goes on waivers. The injury list is a list that lets you change out the registration for a player at any point in time during the season. But players on the injured list have to miss. They cannot play in 6 games. They're out 6 games. So if you have an injury and you think he's out, he's going to be out. If you just sprained an ankle and he's going to be out, say 3 weeks, and you're going to miss 2 to 3 games, don't put him on the injured list because you're going to have to sit him for another 2 to 3 after that. But if you have a player who, damages a knee ligament and he's out 2 months, you can put him on the injured list, and that'll let you replace that player for 2 months with somebody else that you want. So that's the injured list. The season-ending injured list is the same thing, just for players who are done for the season. I had a goalkeeper break his foot, and he was out. He was out 8 to 9 months. That's a season-ending injury. So he gets placed on the season-ending injury list, and then I can choose to replace his wages or his salary and cap impact with somebody else. That's all that does. You will get that offer as players get injured. It'll come to you and be like registration down here, and you click it, and then you can finagle it out. You can place them on the injured list. It'll be as the news articles hit. When an injury hits, then that's when you'll be able to pick how you want to replace the player. The last thing we're going to talk about really quickly, and then we're going to jump back to contracts. I know we've been a little bit all over the place, but that is guaranteed contracts. They are a killer. Guaranteed contracts. I believe Andre Blake had one. MLS guaranteed contract clause. avoid guaranteeing your contracts if you can. What a guaranteed contract, for those that don't know, American sports have these things called guaranteed contracts. So it basically says no matter what happens to the player, you are going to pay him. If he gets hurt, you're going to pay him. If it's a career-ending injury, you're going to pay him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Um, the players' agencies usually are the one that argue for this clause to be put in the contracts, or at least to have this clause available to put into the contracts. So, an MLS guaranteed contract clause to Andre Blake basically says no matter what happens, we're paying this man his money. He's going to get $894,000 a year no matter what. The reason that's important to know is because, and here it is under here, guaranteed contracts. The reason that's important to know, because no matter what happens, if I drop this player, and a really good example here is Joaquin Torres, because he's not registered right now. If I don't register Joaquin Torres, and he gets claimed off waivers, I am still responsible for paying his contract. If I release him, I am still responsible for paying his contract. So his salary cap hit is going to be permanent until this contract expires. So the Union are paying him $310,000 a year. His salary cap impact is $560,000 a year, and it's a guaranteed contract. So he is, until the end of 2024, he's getting paid this amount, and I'm taking a salary cap impact of that amount, no matter what happens. I can reduce it, obviously, by buying it down with GAM, not a problem, but guaranteed contracts basically mean they are, until this contract expires, the club is on the hook for the money. Okay? They're on the hook for the money until the contract expires. And they're on the hook for the money no matter if I trade the player, waive the player, sell the player, whatever. They are hitting my cap until this contract expires. So, my advice, avoid guaranteed contracts like the plague. This is a nice overview here. This little info thing on the right-hand side under maximum salary, you can actually break down and see. So, I have 3 designated players. They're accounting $1.5 million to the cap. I have 15 senior players. Remember, I can have 20 senior and designated players combined. So since I have 3 designated players, I can only have 17 senior contracts. So I have 2 senior contracts I can offer still. They're currently counting 3.5 towards the cap. Senior minimum salary, I only have 5. Remember, I can have a maximum of 4 non-reserve and non-homegrown off-budget players. That basically means senior minimum salary. The reason why I have 5 and one of them is not hitting the cap is because one of them is loaned out and the club that we're loaning them to is paying the wages. So obviously, if the club that you loan to pays the wages, they don't hit the salary. There's nothing to hit the salary cap for, right? So, 2 reserve contracts. They're not. Remember, I can have a maximum of 6. They're not hitting the cap. Players in loan, 3. We're not paying the wages. Players out on loan, 4. We're not paying the wages. And then the combined homegrown cap impact deducted. So homegrown players, their full contract amount does not hit the salary cap. There is a reduction of their salary cap impact because they've been trained at an MLS academy, right? So that's the advantage of signing homegrown players. You can see $102,450 is going back to the salary cap as available because of the homegrown players we have on the sign. And then injured and unregistered players, salary cap hit is $690,000. Why? Because they're guaranteed contracts. That's why. So Joaquin Torres is 560,000 of those injured and unregistered players' salary cap impact. Another one is somebody that was waived prior to taking over the club. So Joaquin Torres here is unregistered, 560,000. A player previously waived 130,000. If I uncheck Damian Lowe, you can see injured and unregistered players' salary cap impact is now 840,000. So, does he come off the salary cap hit? A smidge. The 150 does, but the rest I'm on the hook for. So that is guaranteed contracts in a nutshell. So I hope this was useful. It's an 80-minute video. It's a little bit all over the place. I don't write notes or anything, and I'm not a video editor, so everything is ad lib. But I try to explain it for you. This is a comprehensive guide to the MLS. So it's a fun league. It's actually a really fun league to play in. It's one of the more fun leagues to play in within Football Manager, actually. I would say this league is a lot. I would argue this league is a lot more fun to play in than Ligue 1 in France. I think Ligue 1 is a nightmare. The big draw of France is the Coupe de France. That is that competition is amazing. But playing in like Norway, playing in Denmark, playing in Belgium, not as much fun as, in my opinion, MLS. Um, and very fun league. Once you wrap your head around what you're doing in terms of the contract types and the registration restrictions, you'll start to really kick off on this league. And you gotta love the art of the deal. If you love the art of the deal, you will find this league absolutely exhilarating. It's also, because of the playoff format, an extremely difficult league to win. A very difficult league to win, because you can be the best team in the league all season, and if you don't show up for a conference semifinal, a conference final, or MLS Cup, you don't get to walk home with the trophy. Um, so it can be absolutely taxing on you. But give it a go. I think it's a great save idea for FM24 players looking to pick up a new save. Why not learn something new? It's actually going to get simpler for you in FM26 as well, because the league has announced now in 2025 that clubs don't have to offer just GAM for transfers. They can offer straight cash. The Jack McGlynn deal that sent him from Philadelphia to Houston was one of the first deals to do that. Houston didn't offer any general allocation money for Jack McGlynn. They just offered the Union straight up $2.1 million. And the Union agreed. And the nice thing is, if you sign it, if a player is traded outside of GAM, if they're traded using the new cash window, which clubs can offer their own cash for a player, the player gets to keep 10% of the fee. So Jack got paid $210,000. The Union got paid whatever that balance would have been, $189,000 or $1,890,000, and Houston got Jack McGlynn. So GAM will still be around in FM26. TAM is still going to be around in FM26. But transfers are going to be a little bit more in line with the rest of the world, because you are going to be able to offer straight cash for players going forward. Not in this version of FM, but it is a really, really interesting league that plays through international windows, so results can be absolutely chaotic, and that's what makes it a very, very, very worthy challenge for any FM player looking to try something new while they have FM24 for a few more months. So, my name is Ben Akage. This was a attempted video of a complete walkthrough through the MLS for you. I am on Twitter at BenAkageCasts. I am on YouTube at BenAkage. I am on Blue Sky, which is just benakage.bsky.social. So, check. You have any questions, hit me up on one of those sites. Hit me up in the comments, and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. Good luck in the MLS. Until then, take care.